Hey, folks, it is March the 1st, and today we're going to talk about chapters 129 130. This has to do with some more final thoughts on the changes of Protestantism for those new churches breaking off from the Catholic Church. And then, of course, we're going to see what people call either the Counter-Reformation or the Catholic Reformation. We're going to see the Church of Rome is going to try to fix some of the problems that caused people to want to leave in the first place. However, by then it was way too late, and the reforms they did were not going to bring back Calvinists and, of course, Anglicans and Lutherans who already broken away. And we have the following terms up on the board. What did Protestants do away with? What did they focus on? Then a guy called Ignatius of Loyola, the Jesuits, the Council of Trent, and Inquisition. The first we'll have up here. So this is Pope Paul III. So Paul III was known as one of those good popes because during the Renaissance is when you have a period where even the Catholic Church acknowledges that some of the popes were maybe not so good. Of course, the Catholic Church usually stands by the popes. Make sure your cell phone is off and put away, please. In the Renaissance, there were a few that even Catholics are like, whoa, that was a bad guy. So Paul III was not one of those. He's going to call for a period of trying to revitalize the Catholic Church, do away with some of the worldly things that are going on within it, try to get rid of some of the corruption so that some of these bishops aren't living like princes and people aren't essentially like giving away church wealth to their families and selling indulgences and stuff like that. So he's going to call something called the Council of Trent. And a council is a very big thing in the ancient Christian church because that's when you come up with things like what book should be in the Bible, what exactly is the nature of Jesus. Like it's supposed to be like the really big Christian questions, you know what I'm saying? And so they call this council in order to figure out how can we try to fix the church to make sure that like there's not any like elements of corruption. And so you're also going to have another reformer, Ignatius of Loyola. He's going to be a soldier who's going to have a religious epiphany. And he's going to totally devote his life to Jesus. And so he's going to go off and he's going to get a religious education. But the thing is he's one of those guys who's, even though he's going to found something called the Society of Jesus, which is really focused on education, he wasn't known as being like a brilliant guy. What he was known for was being like a really super hard worker. And so he's going to instill this sense of discipline in the Society of Jesus. And they're going to be known as kind of like the foot soldiers of the Catholic Church. And by that, I mean like intellectually. So they're going to be, they're going to open up a lot of schools, but they're going to be well known as kind of like really deep into religious philosophy. And they're going to be, most of them are going to be like the tutors of like princes and dukes and stuff like that. So they're going to educate very wealthy, very powerful people. But on the flip side, you're going to have guys like, what was his name again? What's the name of the guy who went to Japan?
Francis Xavier?
Huh?
Xavier, that one?
Yeah, Xavier. Gosh, I should have remembered this. Yeah, Francis Xavier, you're right. So guys like Francis Xavier are going to go around, and the Jesuits are going to be in competition with somebody we talked about before called the Dominicans, and seeing who could essentially Christianize the New World first. And so they're out there, I guess, missionaries to Native Americans. A lot of them are going to start going towards the East as well and act as missionaries in China, the Philippines, and of course, Japan. And there's actually going to be a really big Christian movement in Japan until I think it's the Tokugawa period when they wind up crucifying all the Christians they could find in Japan and virtually wiping the religion out of that country for a long time. So the Council of Trent, this is a picture of it. And so here you're going to see all these church officials. It's going to be an on-again, off-again affair It's going to last about 20 years until they finally hammer out how they can try to get rid of some of the corruption. We all know that there are going to be periods of corruption after this anyways, but at least they were trying instead of just kind of like letting it slide. There were attempts to try to bring back some Protestant Christians, but it didn't really work out that well. They are also going to hammer out something called the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, which has like the index of prohibited books. Y'all just read a prohibited book that was on this list, Machiavelli's The Prince. So books that had to do with political and religious ideas that were deemed to be dangerous were put on this. And of course, you know, first on the list were writings by like Martin Luther and stuff like that. But there were also some other books that had to do, like say, like witchcraft and things like that were also put on. So the list of prohibited books. You're also going to have the resurgence of the Inquisition. And so the Inquisition is simply a religious court hearing to see whether or not somebody is spreading false ideas counter to Christianity, heresy, right? And so this is the Inquisition has the power within it to do church law stuff, like to kick you out of the church, excommunicate you, tell you have to do certain things, have your sins forgiven. But death, how that worked is they would turn you up, they would deem you a heretic, and then they would hand you over to the prince, and then the prince would have you tortured and killed. So it was always the secular power who did the blood work. But especially some of them, I have a nice book over here, actually, of a guy who wound up going through the Inquisition many times in Italy. And they kept letting him go, until finally the local government had him put to death. In Spain, there's actually been some recent historical literature that's found out, because Spain was known for having the harshest Inquisition that led to the most deaths, that a lot of modern historians believe that the big thing about the Spanish Inquisition wasn't about rooting out religious heretics. It was mostly about removing people who were from Morocco. Because if you remember, you had the Moroccans controlled Spain for a long time. So really what they were doing is a lot of it was trying to get rid of those people who actually conquered the country years ago. But in any case, it's going to leave a really, really bad legacy for the church for a long time. So even like later on in movies and stuff, you would always see like the evil Inquisition searching out people for their private beliefs and then having them burnt at the stake. So it was one of those things that definitely is going to, it's not going to look well in the future. So that's for later. All right. And we'll just stick with that one. All right, kids. Of course, there's a lot more to all this, but hey, what can you do? All right, so the first part. So we know that it wasn't immediate, except for Calvinists, but there's going to be a lot of things that look very Catholic. They're going to be in early Protestant churches, but eventually they're going to be done away with. What are some of the things that they do wind up getting rid of? Like it was even bolded out for you in the first chapter. Like a lot of them, yeah. Like what? Like, and not just sacraments, but yeah, but there are also some of the practices. Yeah, so like you could say like intercession of saints, right? That's when you ask somebody in heaven to pray to God for you. What's another thing they got rid of? What about the veneration of?
Relics.
Yeah, relics is another one, yeah. So relics, like, especially in the Middle Ages, relics were super important. A lot of people were very super, like, Like relics are still important for like Catholics and like Orthodox Christians today. But like in the Middle Ages, people like really had extra superstitious like beliefs about relics. Though they're still venerated today because people use them to remember God or the saints and stuff like that. What about anything else? Like a lot of them got rid of. What about the veneration of Mary? Right. So. And so, because the reason a lot of Protestants want to get rid of intercession of saints is because they believe that that you could just pray directly to God. You didn't need somebody like to intercede for you. Relics and veneration of Mary is because many of them saw this as a form of idolatry, right? What about priesthood? Didn't a lot of them get rid of the priesthood? Yeah. So the priesthood. What about that place where monks lived? What's that called?
Monastery?
Yeah, monasteries. Because religious orders were seen as one of those things that every individual was supposed to be essentially their own monk, their own priest. They were, or Christ is the priest, and everybody else is just a member of the church, essentially. Like it's kind of like a normal belief at that time for a lot of Protestant people. Okay, we'll kind of stop there. But yeah, a lot of the things like the ritual things, like Latin during the Mass, and stuff like that, it's going to be more simplified. Kelby, I need you to turn around. This is like the third time I'm asking. Thanks. All right. So you don't have to be interested, but you do have to at least like kind of like try to pay attention. All right. So what instead did they focus on? Nothing. Hey, if I don't get any participation, I'm going to have to start doing something else. So, because I got to get the information to you somehow. So,
Focus on the individual relationship with God.
yes, individual relationship with God. That's right. And that was usually found through study of what? Come on, a lot of y'all should just know this even without taking the class. Let me see. Authority found in scriptures, right? So it's a personal relationship with God, guided by scriptures. And where, like with the Catholic Church, they're like back then they were still like, yeah, you need to have an individual relationship with God, but the church can guide you through it, and we have these things that will help you out with it that are based on tradition. Whereas Protestants are like, no. We think that if we go back to scriptures, we're going to be more like the old school Christians, which is the right way to do it. So there's a disagreement. And so, but the thing is, the book's correct. The individual interpretation of scriptures winds up leading to everybody has a different opinion on what each verse says, which leads to the formation of many other churches later on during time. And so, and that still happens today. All right. Ignatius of Loyola.
I know about him.
All right. So, good old Ignatius. What about him?
He founded the Jesuits.
Jesuits, yeah. Founded the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits. And what did they do? Well, okay, no, tell me a little bit more about him. What else? What did he start as?
He helped Charles V as a soldier against France.
Yeah, was a soldier. And the thing is, what's funny, is he was a soldier fighting France, but his whole goal in life at that time was to go on a crusade. Like a lot of Christian soldiers were like this. All they wanted to do was just go to the Holy Land, die in the Holy Land, and a lot of people figured it was like a path of glory, but maybe even salvation. So he wanted that, but he's going to have an epiphany, and so instead, what does he become?
A teacher.
Becomes a religious teacher. Yeah. You bet your bacon. And so he's going to start this group that's going to become very popular, kind of like Francis of Assisi, someone we talked about earlier. He's going to go to Rome, and the Pope is going to be like, wow, you guys are great. I'm going to make you a holy order, give you some funding, and just let you go loose and start spreading the word and all that stuff. So, and it's going to catch on fire. It's going to become a very big group. It's still big today. A lot of the colleges we have here in America that are like Catholic colleges were actually started by Jesuits. Like I think like Notre Dame, a few others were started by Jesuits.
They don't really have a lot of members in their society either.
Well, I mean, it's hard to get into it. To be a Jesuit priest, you basically need like 2 PhDs. Like what I was saying, like they're like the intellectual foot soldiers of the Catholic Church. Like you gotta like really have credentials apparently, right? So
You gotta be well educated.
yeah, very well educated. But for better or worse. All right. So Jesuits, we were just talking about them. So we already said they were founded by him, and I just told you, let's see, like educational / intellectual. But soldiers, of the Catholic Church. So these are the guys that they would send, like I told you, to go educate princes and kings, but they'd also be the ones that'd be like, oh my gosh, there's like a Protestant preacher who's really out debating our priest in this region. So they would try to send Jesuits to try to have, I guess, like debate battles with them, essentially. Or so we try to be like, well, see, we know our Bible too. We got our guys who are smart. So because it was about trying to win over people's hearts, but a lot of it also was trying to just win people over intellectually, right? So, and what else was their mission? What else did they do? Spread Christianity to where? Yeah. To the east. And of course, the east of Europe. Like, it's like Japan, for example. Cool. Good job. All right. Next one, Council of Trent. So they acknowledge there's some problems and they're trying to fix them up. So what does the Council of Trent do?
Really coming together.
Yeah. To
Like shape that help change the
sought to rid.
little of bad stuff. I guess.
Yeah.
Of the church.
The Catholic Church is simony. What's simony?
Like selling shit like church stuff.
Yeah, like simony it's like I forgot where it comes from. It's from like Simon, I forgot who he was, but it's basically selling jobs, right? Like if I was like, hey, if I was mayor and I was like, hey, I'll give you a job that pays $1 million a year if you give me $100,000 of it. That would be selling. That'd be simony. It's corruption, and it happens everywhere. So sought to get rid of the Catholic Church of corruption. Hey, what all things did they institute though? Let's see. They made a little book.
Oh, the list of prohibited books,
Yeah.
the index.
a list of prohibited books. Yeah, that'll work. Which y'all have read one, haha. I got to admit, there's actually been books I bought on purpose because I saw they were banned in other countries. So, like, I got one. Now it's on my. Yeah, I got one that I bought like half a year ago. I was like, "What? You can't buy this in Europe?" So I just bought it. I didn't even read it yet. All right. So, the Inquisition. So, what's the Inquisition? It was a churchy something.
It's like a reformation.
Yeah, it's yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a religious hearing, like a court hearing, for stopping heresy. We're just going to go with that, though we do know it could be politically motivated. It could be very violent. But oddly enough, despite all that, most of the time it was simply a warning, or even a fine. And in a lot of places, like in Italy, it was mostly just like, hey, we heard that you were saying some stuff that you shouldn't say in public, so stop it. And they'd be like, okay, we'll do it again. So, for the most part. Hey, we're gonna come back tomorrow. We'll go over another chapter or two, rapidly wrapping up the book, and I'll talk to you later. Well, give it